Now, where there have been actually serious health effects in space flight, it's not radiation. It's zero gravity exposure. Okay, and this has been clear. It's been forceful, deterioration of muscle and bone and cardiovascular and so forth. Okay, now there's a remedy here. It's called artificial gravity. Okay, and much simpler than trying to develop a 200,000 kilowatt space nuclear power source, or developing a pill that will alter human physiology to accommodate itself to zero gravity. You can just rotate the spacecraft, create gravity, and avoid these effects. Okay, so the crew flies to Mars, they get to Mars, the tether is cut, they aerobrake, they land at the site where the fully fueled Earth return vehicle is waiting for them. We have the other Earth return vehicle we're flying out, following them to Mars to act as a backup. But if it's not needed, it can be landed somewhere else to prepare propellant for the next mission. So the scheme is 2 launches every 2 years, 1 to open up a new site, the other to prepare one to exploit a previously open site, and the second, the Earth return vehicle, to open up the next site so that you can keep exploring various places on Mars. Okay, this is an actual photograph of the Mars base. Okay, so you have the Earth return vehicle, the conical vehicle here. In the background is the reactor, the tuna can hab, some solar panels set up for backup power. You also get backup power by, if needed, by running the engine of the rover. It's a little pressurized rover there. Probably hard to see in the shadow of the Earth return vehicle is the light truck that was used to deploy the reactor. In the foreground is a greenhouse, not a mission critical element, but an experiment in learning how to grow crops in Martian soil and Martian water and Martian gravity and Martian sunlight for the benefit of future missions and future bases. Now, we're going to be on Mars for 1.5 years. Okay, there's 2 flight plans for doing Mars missions. There's the right plan and the wrong plan. Okay, the right plan is known as the conjunction plan. The wrong plan is known as the opposition plan. And these terms actually have an astrological origin, which I won't go into. But be that as it may, the names have stuck. And the conjunction plan involves flying to Mars on 6 to 8 month trajectories, staying on Mars for 1 year to 1.5 years, and flying back on a 6 to 8 month trajectory. And typically you use the 8 month trajectories for cargo and the 6 months for the piloted transits. The opposition mission, so the total round trip time is 2.5 years, with 60% of the time spent on Mars. The opposition mission can be done in a round trip time of 2 years, but only 1 month is spent at Mars. So if your figure of merit for the Mars mission is minimum time spent away from home, you choose the opposition mission. If your figure of merit for the Mars mission is exploration days on Mars divided by tons in low Earth orbit, that is product versus cost, then you choose conjunction. The conjunction mission also has lower delta V's, which is why it's favored by people who actually want to go to Mars, but unfavored by people pushing advanced technology, which always looks better in trade studies the higher the delta V's are. Okay, because if you make the delta V's high enough, then you must have advanced propulsion. Anyway, we're on Mars for 1.5 years. We will explore many things to explore on Mars. Of course, the leading and most important thing is to resolve the question of is there life on Mars? I think that actually the chances of life on Mars in the past are extremely high, because Mars had liquid water on its surface for 1 billion years, as now shown by our various robotic probes. And there would have been life on Mars in that water if from no other source than transfer from the Earth due to meteoric impact and transfer. But the real question is looking for active life under the surface, because what you want to find out is if life on Mars is simply an Earth transfer, or if we go to Mars and we find similar biochemistry to Earth, but with organisms demonstrating simpler structure than free-living bacteria. Because the big mystery about life on Earth in that we find no free living organisms with a simpler structure than bacteria, which are actually highly complex and advanced. And, so, it's like, why do we find no pre-Renaissance buildings in North America? Well, the answer is that Western culture came to North America from somewhere else. It didn't originate here. Okay, if we could find pre-bacteria on Mars, it would show that life on Earth came from Mars. On the other hand, if we find things demonstrating an alternate chemistry, alternate biochemistry, then it would show that life is an emergent phenomena that originates independently wherever there are appropriate conditions. And that means the universe would be filled with life, especially since we now know that extrasolar planetary systems are common rather than rare. Which is something that the next speaker will certainly address, I'm sure. Okay, so string of missions. We could set up a string of warming huts on Mars, and at a certain point, decide where is the best place to build a permanent base, to basically establish the first foothold of a new branch of human civilization on Mars. So, and I won't go into it, but you could also use the same hardware set to build lunar bases as well, which would be a secondary objective. Okay, but this is the full set of hardware we need, primary flight hardware we need to establish human presences on the Moon, Mars, and asteroids as well, for that matter. We don't need giant Battlestar Galactica spaceships serviced by orbiting propellant depots with all kinds of complex things that we don't have. We just need a good heavy lift booster, a good transfer stage, and habitation modules, and some return and reentry vehicles. This is stuff we know how to do, okay? I mean, frankly, my main purpose in walking you through the Mars Direct plan is simply not because there's all sorts of variants on this and alternatives that could be chosen as well. It's just an existence proof that you could do a Mars mission with the kind of stuff we have. And in other words, we're much better prepared today to send humans to Mars than we were to send men to the moon in 1961. In 1961, no one could get up and show you a bunch of stuff and say, well, we have stuff like this and stuff like this and stuff. Let's just issue the contracts and go. And we were there 8 years later. And if we had the vision, if we had the commitment, we could have humans on Mars within a decade. And there's no reason not to. The universe awaits. Mars is not the final destination, but it's the direction. It's the first world, the closest one, which has on it all the resources needed to support life and therefore potentially civilization. And if we do that, if we establish that first human foothold on another world, we will have achieved something of world historic importance. Most of you in the audience here are Americans, and I'm sure if I asked all of you what happened in 1492, you would all say Christopher Columbus' voyage to the New World. But a lot of other things happened in 1492. England and France signed a peace treaty. The Borgias took over the papacy. Lorenzo de' Medici died. Okay, if there had been European newspapers at that time comparable to, the big newspapers today, these are the events that would have merited the headlines, not, this Italian weaver's son going off with 3 ships to nowhere. And yet, no one today cares about that. Okay, if I asked you who was Queen of Spain when Columbus voyaged, you'd say Isabella. Who was the next Queen of Spain? Who was Queen of France when Isabella was Queen of Spain? Okay, no one knows. These people, these other events are insignificant in the grand historic sweep. Okay, 500 years from now, no one is going to care who was Secretary of State or who came out on top in Iraq. They're not going to even know what Iraq was. Okay, just like, some of the people funding Apollo may have thought we were going to the moon in order to outclass the Soviet Union, but 500 years from now, nobody except history buffs are going to know what the Soviet Union was. Okay, I mean, it's going to be like the Zollverein. I bet you there's one person in this room who knows what the Zollverein was. Oh, two. Okay. All right. Okay. Anyway, it's going to be like that. Okay. And but this is important. Okay. This is wonderful. If we have it in our power to create a new branch of human civilization, and not merely a new branch of human civilization, but one which marks a path to an open human future, one that does not face this predicament of limited possibilities and limited resources in which human freedom must be constrained so that human aspirations must be constrained, which is the vision of the future that basically threatens the human future, okay? Because if you have a human future in which possibilities are limited and there's only so much to go around, if there's only so much to go around, then human aspirations must be constrained, and therefore various authorities and tyrannies must be empowered in order to do the constraining. Okay, that's a human freedom without hope. If you have a future in which this is not accepted, in which we understand that the resources and possibilities available to us are limited only by our creativity, and so the more creative people we have, and the more tools they're given, and the more opportunities they're given, okay, the better it is. So the more free people are, the better it is. And it is better for us if the sons and daughters of Chinese peasants become scientists and engineers so that they can add their inventive genius to human progress, instead of it being a world where they must be kept down, and because there's only so much to go around, you know. Okay, so these are the stakes. And it's not just about that future. How we conceive of that future today affects what we do today. In other words, even if this is in the future. I mean, we had world wars in this past century because some people were convinced that their nation needed more living space because they're going to run out of space, even though it was complete fiction. It was nevertheless in their minds, okay? And it resulted in catastrophes. And this idea that there is only so much to go around inevitably leads to anti-human and disastrous results. So the stakes could not be higher. This idea of committing to Mars, to go to Mars, to create that vision, to make it clear that there are no limits to human possibilities, that this mental prison offered by the ideologues of limited resources and limited possibilities does not need to be accepted, and that their solutions do not need to be accepted, but rather we can have a future based on hope, creativity, and freedom. Thank you. Okay, we started a couple of minutes late. I want to take just like 3 questions and then we'll move on. Okay. Over there. No, what? All right, over there, sure.
So, hello. I actually flew in here from Singapore, which is just about the other side of the world. Singapore is interesting because it's a city-state. English is the primary language, and yet there's a lot of Chinese, so it's kind of this mixture of two worlds. And whenever I'm here at the Mars Society or reading at things in general, we're always talking about the US plan how to go to Mars. And yet I'm kind of wondering, you know, with everything that happens, the US now is relying on the Russians with the Soyuz and so on. What about other countries, and what about China? I mean, what are the chances that 10 years from now or 15 years from now we'll wake up and hear, oh, the Chinese made it to Mars? And, you know, so my first question is, what are the chances of that happening? The second one is, what are the chances of maybe the Chinese space program energizing NASA the same way, you know, the Russian space program did back in 1962?
Okay, it's a complex question. I'll try to answer it briefly. There's a certain chance that they could spur competition. I would hope it doesn't come to that, because if it did, the United States at that point would be facing competition